Hello, I'm Corinna Gardner, Senior Curator of Design and Digital at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. It's brilliant to be joining you today, even if only virtually, to talk about rapid response collecting and the broader opportunities and challenges of collecting in the contemporary moment. Rapid response collecting was first introduced at the V&A in 2014, when we were tasked with thinking afresh about the role of design and what it can do in contemporary society. From the outset, rapid response collecting has been a way of bringing objects into the museum that looks outward to the world and to design things that are the subject of public conversation and debate. We've been doing it for 7 years, and today, in an unimaginably different world, we ask ourselves questions about what it means to collect, to be a contemporary curator, and what the role of the museum is for their visitors and for culture as a whole. My talk is in 3 parts: an introduction to rapid response collecting, its context and reactions, and then what this last year has meant and how we deal with the here and now. The now near 50 objects we've acquired as part of the rapid response collecting programme include a range of Christian Louboutin high-heeled shoes in ethnically diverse shades of nude, luxury goods that speak of a shifting economy, a set of anti-homeless spikes that discourage people from resting and sleeping and that ask questions about their use in public space and who has a say about what is permitted. The Lego Research Institute, the first figurine set in the toy maker's 82-year history to feature women in a non-gendered professional setting. Say hello to a paleontologist, a chemist, and an astronomer. A set of stamps that mark a shift from an underground subcultural figure to a Finnish national hero. A 3D printed titanium handlebar, which through its means of manufacture redrew the rules of competitive cycling. Imagine how fast you might go. A WeChat-enabled soft toy, marketed to parents as a way to communicate with their children when working away from home. For us, an object of rapid urbanisation and the communities left behind. A full-body swimming costume designed to encourage women wanting to dress modestly into sports, and which became a symbol of national identity politics when women were fined and in some cases banned from wearing the garment on beaches across Europe. A British high street fashion brand speaking about immigration at a time when so many feel unwelcome. This is the set of posters in the underground system here in London. A design for public health. This is a mosquito emoji that reaches across language barriers to warn of the arrival of the deadliest animal on Earth. And a digitally distributed design identity, Extinction Rebellions, which was created under the rubric of Do It Together. As a design, it gave visual cohesion to a global call for climate action. And the last of my examples for now, a shoe, the Nike Alphafly Next Percent, with a carbon fibre footplate that enabled the first sub-2-hour marathon. This made you faster by design. Looking through this list of objects, you may very well be asking, what do these disparate and at times modest things have in common? What is their relation to contemporary design? And what place do they have in a museum? And in particular at the V&A, best known for its grand galleries, as you can see here, and our fine collections of decorative arts, like those I understand that you can find also at the Franz Mayer Museum. We're also very well known for our very glamorous and extravagant exhibitions. Here you can see Dior. From the beginning, to come back to rapid response, it has been about a small display in this bigger institutional picture. It's been 12 objects at any one time. Yet beyond the walls of the museum, As a programme of acquisition, as a group of objects, it is always punched well above its weight. It's always made the news. Why is this the case, and what can we learn from that? We took a lead from the founding mission of the V&A, which is to be a place of learning for all, for makers, manufacturers and consumers. Rapid response is a call to action. We determinedly reach beyond an authorial model. So that's to reach beyond a list of great and known designers, to look out to the world, to the objects that are the subject of popular and critical conversation. What are we talking about when we walk along the street, or perhaps when we share a glass of wine? And our every interest is in expanding the definition of design to enfranchise new technologies, new modes of practice and manufacture, and to embrace things otherwise often considered undesigned. All that we do is done in public. Each new acquisition is put on immediate display. We make clear why the object has been acquired at a given moment in time and when it entered the museum. Here you can see the dates alongside the titles of the objects on display. The dates mark that moment of entry into the collection, when these everyday objects become worthy of the museum collection. Anyone is invited to suggest objects for acquisition. By looking closely, we seek to address the big questions that each of us face as individuals, or that we face collectively as a society today. Reactions to rapid response collecting have been broad and at times quite different. Since starting in 2014, these have ranged from surprised, as you can see here in the Financial Times, one of the major newspapers in the UK with an international readership, through to the outraged. Dezeen is one of the most read online design news sites, and the author here writes to us at the museum, or suggests we as curators at the V&A should not be so interested in clickbait curating, implying that responsiveness leads to a lack of rigour, or perhaps more worryingly, it is too unlike what has properly gone before. Change is cast as a lessening of standards. So this is a question about what the museum is there to do and what might be considered as design that is important enough to enter into the museum. This is precisely what we want to question when it comes to rapid response collecting. That notion of standards, whose standards, that's so much about what museums are seen to be about. But I think it's something that we should always ask and put a question. Whose standards are we there to represent? Interest in rapid response collecting, as I've already suggested, has been considerable and sustained. Yes, this is because the objects are newsworthy, so they are easy to fit within the news circuits. But it's also because rapid response puts three things at question. What is design today? What is it to collect? And what role can and should the museum play in the 21st century? When the pandemic struck early last year, in collecting terms, the V&A was in some ways prepared. It was not a preparedness I had ever imagined, but rapid response collecting was an established mode of reactive curatorial practice. During this period of immense stress, strain and change across the globe, we at the V&A sought to observe and listen with a keen interest, to look to objects that are likely to be of sustained importance, and that through their design, and it's important that it's through their design, enable us to come together to probe the contemporary moment, and also to do so sensitively, to act responsibly and to be kind, to foster relationships and amplify the voices of those who we engage with. What we see here is the government public information campaign from the New Zealand government. It was a piece of graphic and communication design that was internationally recognised for its excellence, and I've chosen it here because being kind, being inclusive and being able to work with the many voices in society is such an important part of rapid response collecting, but also that wider activity of the 21st Century Museum. Another of the objects that we brought into the collection more recently is this Charlotte valve. So that's the yellow piece that is 3D printed that you see at the top of what is a snorkeling mask. So the thing that you might otherwise associate with vacation and seeing the fish under the surface of the sea. But this was a bottom-up, community-driven solution for a ventilator mask that showed how design can be an agent for change. It went from the holiday to the hospital. Many of these 3D printed valves were used to adapt these decathlon-bought objects to change lives and save lives. Another example is a roll of melt-blown fabric, essential to medical grade PPE or personal protective equipment. The face mask is something that's so much now of our everyday and remains so, but there were periods of time when they were in such extreme demand that the material from which they are made, which was first designed in the 1950s, became more valuable than steel, copper, silver and gold. This for us is an object that enables us to ask questions about materials innovation, but also the value that we place on these different moments of innovation and change. The last of the objects that I'm going to talk about in terms of recent acquisitions that speak to the moment of the pandemic are these copies or the covers of the July 2020 issue of the British fashion magazine Vogue. It's a set of magazine covers that through their portrait images call out a radical shift in attitudes to the value of work and those who do it. Images that make visual our new reckoning with social and racial injustice. Here we have three women who kept London and the UK going during a time of immense challenge. There is a midwife, a train driver and a supermarket worker. They are women who are wearing their work clothes, who have done their own makeup on the cover of the most important fashion magazine in the UK. That marks a significant moment of change. Here, and I hope you can read them, we have a list of the objects we've acquired to date. On the left, you can see the shorthand for the objects, and on the right, the motivations for their acquisition. Looking at them now as a group together, it prompts a series of observations. These diverse objects of design stand as evidence of social, political, manufacturing and economic change. In what we do as contemporary curators, therefore, we forge a record of our time. But whose time? Museums show themselves in what they acquire, and it is imperative that we ask ourselves, what can and must we do to enable a broader constituency to engage with critical debate about design things and about the world around us, and most importantly, our place within it? How can we open up ourselves to take new and distributed forms of expertise seriously? And how can we better enfranchise our users and publics? And to explain that a little bit further, museums are so often seen as places with keys. There is a barrier, a sense of awe and amazement in coming into the museum and thinking that those objects have been chosen by a specialist expertise. But museums are public spaces. They are so often public collections. And therefore we have to think, who are our visitors and who do we stand for in showing and giving objects voice? How do we do that? At the V&A, we recently hosted an exhibition called The Future Starts Here. One of the ways to advocate for the power of the polyphonic collection and to seed the outlook and approach of rapid response collecting across the wider museum was to see how our objects play out in loan exhibitions and wider collections activities. The pussy hat, which you see here, was one of the acquisitions we've made as part of rapid response collecting. It's a piece of craft, it's a piece of political design, but it was one that enabled women who so often didn't feel they were political to make the case and reject or object to an increasingly populist and male-dominated politics in the United States. And the other way that rapid response collecting has so importantly impacted beyond the objects that come into the collection is how we think about the exhibition of our more contemporary collections at the V&A as a whole. Here you can see an image of our very recently opened Design 1900 to Now galleries. These are spaces that showcase our V&A collections over the last 125 years plus of design. So they go from 1900 into the here and now, and they reach across fashion, furniture, textiles, photography, graphic, product design, design in that broader sense. And they're also the spaces where we now show the rapid response collecting activities. What we've done here is to use the collections displays to look at design as a tool for understanding how we live together. And we ask and invite our audiences to question what happened in the past, what is our present, and how might we be able to collectively and individually shape our future. Just to go in a bit deeper into what that might be, here one of the sections is remaking ourselves. The past is energized by the present. And now I can appreciate that in this image, some of the objects might be quite small, but come with me on this. You can see the Louboutin nudes, which I showed you earlier, and the Lego Research Institute at the front of the showcase. They are now exhibited as part of the wider collection and are shown alongside a cup and saucer, which you can just see raised up on a platform, bearing the emblem of the Women's Social and Political Union, which was an organisation that in the early 20th century campaigned for the women's right to vote. Here we have a logo which was in the colours green, purple and white, which immediately, through its design, made clear that the wearer of those colours or the user of this cup was in support of women's votes. We exhibit these objects alongside a booklet under the title of The New Woman, which calls for a radical reform of women's dress. This is from the late 1920s. And you can just see that there in the black and white black, red and white cover that the woman's long plaited hair is being cut off. These displays, as I'm trying to explain, reach across periods and tell new stories. They raise questions and ask new voices to come to the fore. Example is the section that looks at sustainability and subversion. And in particular here, we're looking at a grouping of objects under the title of Impacting the Planet. The dresser here is a classic of Art Deco designed by Émile Jacques Ruhlmann. It is inlaid with ebony and ivory, and that's specifically why we are interested in this object. This section and these groupings of objects ask about natural resources and how we as individuals, humans in this world, and our use of them have changed the nature of our natural world. How has our relationship, say, to ivory and ebony had an impact on the wider global and planetary health? So our main aim with this new gallery is to be broad, international and inclusive. This is an ever ongoing task, as our collections are shaped over time and by the priorities of those who create them. Today, rapid response collecting and a determination to recognise new and diverse expertise and meaning making in our acquisitions practice are part of it, but the work of our galleries properly starts when the doors open to our visitors. Museums are about putting objects into public conversation. Our every effort must be to engage with our visitors in person and online, and to listen to their reactions, and to always welcome their suggestions for change for the collection. We need to be open, and to be open in public. And again, that is what rapid response collecting has brought to how we work with our 20th century and contemporary collections at the V&A. Every object that we acquire as part of rapid response collecting, and you can see a large scale poster at the back of this image, which was about anti-Asian hate crime and its increase during the time of the pandemic. It's so important to listen to the voices and the suggestions of others, and to be doing that in the open and in public. So to come back to that point, every object we acquire as part of rapid response collecting goes on immediate display. Our actions, our thinking, our doing is in public. We are rigorous, investigative, and curious in the work that we do. This is one of our rapid response acquisitions as well, Hello Barbie. Every child's dream, or that's what we hear, is that toys might come alive and speak to them. The internet-enabled reality was Hello Barbie. Quite unfortunately, she was hacked very soon after being put to the market. And so what Barbie said to our children wasn't quite what we had dreamt as a child, or what as our parents we might have imagined. So it's that sense of the object being present and alive and open to different interpretations that's so important. As curators, we're cultural listeners, and we need to go out into the world to look, to listen, and to act. And in doing so, at this moment or every moment of change, museums and their collections, past and present, are relevant again and again. Thank you, and I look forward perhaps to some questions.